So we're still on with our discussion on web performance, and you were talking about HTML.
Yeah.
And that's what I thought, like, whoa, that deserves its own video, right?
Yeah.
So tell us about HTML. How does it relate to performance?
Okay, I've got a really philosophical answer. Web performance is like this big of a topic. The bigger topic that is everything is accessibility. Accessibility is about design, right? Something as simple as, do you have the correct contrast ratio? It could be as simple as, can somebody with limited sort of mobility, could they use a keyboard instead of a mouse? So I actually think that performance is a subset of accessibility. Can somebody with a bad connection access this site? Can somebody with maybe a slightly cheaper device access this site? So the way HTML affects performance is part of the bigger picture accessibility thing, because making a fast website, yeah, you can argue it's to make my clients more money, but really I want people to enjoy faster web experiences. They want the content sooner. There are other things like HTML is, I love HTML so much. Everything you've ever looked at on a web page, well, except if you're looking at an actual image, but every website is HTML, or it's DOM. So even if you're using JavaScript to build virtual DOM, it's all DOM, and DOM and HTML are so synonymous that people should really care about that. It's the most fundamental part of any web page. A web page that has CSS but no DOM is useless. A web page that has JavaScript but no DOM is useless. A web page that has HTML and no JavaScript is still usable. You can still read that. I'm sure you've seen it before where a website loads and the CSS doesn't arrive. Yeah, it doesn't look very nice, but you can still read what you were there for.
Read, yeah.
So HTML is vastly important in terms of just levels of access to a website. I mentioned in a previous video, a client of mine had one JavaScript runtime syntax error. Their entire site became unusable. You make a syntax error in your HTML, it'll still work. The browser's very forgiving. So that's my big philosophical answer is HTML is accessibility, focus on that. I've got a friend called Leonie Watson, who is one of the most profound, smartest speakers. Like, she does a lot of conference talks. She's just dead nice, she's great. But one of the most profound things I ever heard her say is, unfortunately, Leonie she's non-sighted, right? She's blind. And at a conference, at the Q&A afterwards, somebody said to her, what is your biggest barrier to using the web? As a non-sighted person, what is the most troubling or difficult aspect of the web for you? And she was like, 100%, no questions asked, lack of semantic markup. Because people think HTML is so easy, it's like a Mickey Mouse toy language. Well, then why do they keep getting it wrong? If it's so easy, why do you keep messing it up? So I've got really strong opinions on this. To have a slightly less philosophical answer, and to answer your question more technically, I guess, HTML is great for performance. HTML is tokenizable very, very quickly. So what that means is that, or to put it another way, for a JavaScript file to be useful, 100% of it has to download and be correctly parsed and executed before it does what it's supposed to. Conversely, HTML is a declarative language. It's parsed line by line. That means that you don't need to have 100% of an HTML file on your device for it to be useful. It's effectively a streaming format.
It is, actually. You can chunk it.
Exactly.
And the browser shows it as chunks.
So what that means is that as you are streaming or as the HTML is arriving, the browser can start reading through it. And it can start, okay, I can't render the page yet because I haven't got enough information, but I can find these style sheets, this script, and this image. There's a second sort of hidden parser inside every browser called the preload scanner. And while the primary parser is doing the work to parse your head tags or parse the title tag or work out if the site should be responsive or not, the secondary scanner can just sprint ahead and it's allowed to just run through the HTML. And before it's even started rendering the page, it can be finding images in the sidebar or icons in the footer or a Twitter widget in the at the end of the article, whatever it is. HTML is amazing for performance. The problem with JavaScript applications is the preload scanner doesn't work because the preload scanner can only read...
Needs a DOM.
Yeah, it can only read tokenizable bits of DOM. If you've got to run a 1.2 meg React application before you've got tokenizable DOM, you've made everything a late discovered resource.
Because you don't start getting resources until you executed that JavaScript.
Exactly, 100%. There's a really interesting thing, and it went a bit controversial, surprisingly. Imager.com, imgur.com, they've built their entire site as a monolithic React application, right? It's a pretty big, clunky website. In order to view an image, just an image page on Imager, on a mobile device, it took 45 seconds to view an image. That was on a 3G connection. The reason it took 45 seconds is the image wasn't discovered until the 110th request. Out of 553, the image was the 110th thing requested. And that was because the browser had to download a huge runtime, run it. The image, which is the most important thing on the page, not the only thing, because you've got branding, you've got upvotes, you've got comments, but the image is the main thing. Now, we mentioned in a previous video that your site is only as slow as its slowest API call. What they'd done is they'd made the image just as important as everything else. When you deprioritize everything, nothing's important. So I just made a tweet about this, and well, if this hadn't been a JavaScript application, if this had just been HTML with an image tag, this would have been so much faster. And I actually did some kind of weird manipulation stuff in web page test where I could rewrite the HTML on the fly to include an image tag, the exact same page, right? The exact same page. Just including an image tag in the HTML. Instead of being requested as asset 110, it was requested as asset number 3. It was the third asset resource to be downloaded. And the next thing that happened was all other things being the same. A 3G connection, all the other hundreds of requests, all the ads, all the JavaScript. Instead of rendering at 45 seconds, the image rendered at 13 seconds, which is still completely unacceptable, but it's over 3 times faster just by using an image tag. And that is how HTML is important for performance.
Yeah.
I honestly think that an engineering team tasked with building something as huge as Imager or whatever, I'm not blaming the engineering team, but any team ever in the world, if they are told that, hey, you just got hired to build this site that everybody has heard of, then there must be a part of their brain that thinks, oh my goodness, surely this is such a complex and important website that an image tag isn't good enough. Surely there must be. Surely there must be something more
serious.
Yes. What's the enterprise version of an image tag? And I often think that people forget that HTML is really simple, and it may make you feel like you studied for years and years and years at a top university to learn what declarative HTML. That's boring. It is boring, but it works, and it's the most accessible. It's the fastest.
Often. Yeah. Go ahead.
And then the other thing is, all the comments, all the upvotes, all the social media stuff around that image could be done with an API call, done lazily, right? Get an image tag for your image, but then if you want your comments and upvotes, please make sure you have them. But let's make a separate API call to grab the comment data. Let's make a separate API call for the upvotes. There's no reason you can't do both. So I thought that was a really interesting case study, and it made me a real HTML.
No, but especially it talks for itself. The fact that often when you have a complex, important thing that you need to achieve, you should choose simplicity all the time. Like, for instance, we were talking about CDN. And we were talking about okay, how can we make our API faster? And everyone will be running, you should do streaming, you should do event sourcing. There are so many technologies out there, and they're fun and I love them. But by the end of the day, just put your API in front and a CDN in front of it, and that is it.
Yeah.
Simple.
Yeah.
It's a proxy, and it works. So sometimes choosing simplicity is making sure that things will work the way you think they will be working, instead of having all that hassle that maybe will not work. And having that image tag is that story. And also having the HTML. The HTML is as you say, it's parsable, it's data, and every browser can understand it. Every proxy can understand it. Everything on the web can read it and understand it.
Exactly.
And can optimize. We can even imagine. I don't know if the CDNs they do it, but it's easy for a CDN to parse an HTML page and predict something that, okay, these resources will be necessary. Let me prepare them for you, or something like that.
I believe, and I could be wrong, so if I am wrong, I'm sure someone in the comments will tell me. It may be Railgun, which is by Cloudflare, which I think parses your HTML and finds sub-resources as the HTML is being served, and it will initiate pulls for those, right?
Yeah.
Because, utilize, like, lean on the platform, use what's there. I mean, also, I'm not being critical of Image's like engineering team or anything with this, because there's so much context that I'm not aware of.
And there should be historical reasons and a lot of other things,
exactly.
Of course, obviously.
But I think and my friend Jeremy Keith talks about this all the time, pick the simplest possible technology to do the one job that you need to do, then enhance from there. Imager is a complex beast. It serves millions of social media users a day, right? It's not just a place for viewing an image anymore, but the simplest thing it does is displays an image. So pick the simplest tool for that and then add your complexity afterwards. And the other thing I want to say on this is that I've been a web developer for 12 years now. I've been through my cycle of, I don't know what I'm doing, so I'll do it easy. Then a bit of seniority where I'm like, well, this is a bit too easy. I need to over-engineer this. I need to make sure I look clever. Now, 12 years later, I'm like, just go back to an image tag, right? Just do it easy again. But, that was an interesting little case study. But if there's one thing from this video, it's that HTML is actually beautiful because it's got accessibility baked in. It's got performance baked in.
Performance.
Interoperability, right? Because like you say, anything on the web can understand it because it's the de facto language of the web.
Right, and that understanding is important. That's why if you ship it through JavaScript, no one else will be able to read it until it is displayed. Which means all the CDNs they can't run it, they can't see it.
Exactly.
Everything in between.
It takes Google can parse JavaScript applications now. Googlebot can do it. But what happens is, in order for Googlebot to parse and index a JavaScript application, Googlebot will visit once, and it'll be like, okay, this is a JavaScript application. I'll come back in 2 weeks. It's 2 weeks. The documentation's out there. That means if you've got anything like timely, it's like, well, I guess someone can Google it in 2 weeks. So yeah,
that's right. But also for HTML, you talked a lot about how the browser will scan through it to kind of be able to optimize it, and fetch resources, especially. But also there is a part where devices could have a native implementation of it, which will make performance way better than anything that you would write in JavaScript. For instance, selects and basic HTML tags that will be displayed. So for instance, select on an iPhone, which will, the iPhone will show it as a native thing instead of like zooming into a thing.
Way nicer, right? Way nicer.
Way nicer and maybe more performant as well.
The biggest pro tip I could give anyone watching this about making your HTML performant is make your head tags as small as possible.
The head tag.
I'm obsessed with head tags. The head tag is the only bit of the entire document that blocks rendering. You can't render the first line of the body until all the head is finished. So the more you put in your head tags, the longer you're delaying start render.
But what do people put in head tags? I mean, when you see it and you say like, no, don't do that.
Some things have to go in there. So for example, maybe style sheets that apply to the entire page need to go in the head tags. Your favicon must go in the head tag. So certain things like that. But then one client I'm working with at the moment, they've server rendered their entire React application, which is great, right? It's good for performance. But all of the JSON data is about this much JSON data. That's all in the head.
Wow.
Now, it's not until all of that has been parsed they can even start rendering the statically rendered body. The body tag could be
available. It's available already.
It's been server rendered. So my advice to them is just all that hydration, rehydration, sort of that JSON data, nudge it just out of your head tags and into your body, and it means that the body can at least be displayed while it's being hydrated. Whenever that stuff's in the head, it all blocks rendering. So yeah, really
very good tip. Well, thank you. Maybe next video we'll talk more about image optimization and
Sounds
other
good
things.
to me.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks.